Hi there. Here's a video explanation of the election of 1860, one of the most significant presidential elections in American history. So we'll start with the two main parties who were participating in this election. One is the Democratic Party, which had support in both the North and the South, and typically was in favor of slavery, although that certainly wasn't their only party platform, which contributed to the fact that they had support across the country. We will see that issue of slavery is going to lead to a division within the party itself and help determine the outcome. But the Democrats are a national party in 1860. The other main party that they are competing against is the Republican Party, which was almost entirely in the North. This is a very new party. It had just been formed in the mid-1850s and was primarily an anti-slavery party. Now, there are other issues that the Republicans stood for, but for the most part, it was established as an anti-slavery party. So who was actually running for president? Who was nominated by these two parties? The Democratic Party held a convention that ultimately to choose their nominee that ultimately failed and led to a split within the party itself. So in the end, the Democrats nominated just one person for president, but two. In the North, Democrats nominated Stephen Douglas. We've met him before. He was from Illinois. He was the one who came up with the idea of popular sovereignty as a way of organizing the Kansas and Nebraska territories to help build his railroad through Chicago. And he had successfully avoided the issue of slavery and coming out with his own stance on the issue by supporting popular sovereignty, letting the people in the territories decide. And so that helped him politically because he had not come out on one side or the other on the issue of slavery. But Southern Democrats, who cared very much about the continuation of slavery, they chose their own nominee, John Breckinridge. He was very upset with Stephen Douglas as a traitor to his own party because he had not openly supported the spread of slavery. And so the Democrats now have nominated two individuals, and they've essentially split themselves over the issue of slavery. On the Republican side, Abraham Lincoln is the nominee. He had become a national figure after a series of debates with Stephen Douglas in 1858. And he now has the support of the whole party, which is gaining momentum after issues like the fugitive slave law, Bleeding Kansas, the Dred Scott court case. So his anti-slavery stance is becoming more popular, especially in the North. However, there is one more individual that's thrown into the mix here. There is a Constitutional Union Party, which is led by John Bell. So he's a slaveholder from Tennessee, and when we look at a map, we'll see why that is significant, who believed that the solution to this issue was moderation rather than taking a stand on slavery. And so his number one objective, and the number one objective of the Constitutional Union Party, is to keep the country together, so focus on the Constitution rather than on issues like slavery. In the end, Abraham Lincoln, we all know, won the election of 1860, but he did so with only 40% of the popular vote. So recall that the president is not elected by the popular vote. It's elected through the Electoral College, and we'll see a map of that in a moment. But it is significant that less than half the country voted for Abraham Lincoln, and yet he won the election. The decision was so split that, in fact, Abraham Lincoln's name never even appeared on the ballots in 10 southern states. So he wasn't even an option, really, to vote for. Hadn't campaigned there at all. It was kind of a waste of time for Abraham Lincoln to try to get votes from states like Georgia or South Carolina. The southern states were furious about the fact that Abraham Lincoln had won, and they refused to recognize him as the president who had won the election of 1860. If we look at a map here of the election results, we can see this split between North and South. So those orange states there are the states that voted for Abraham Lincoln. The purple states are the states that were won by Stephen Douglas. You can see that he won Missouri and the split vote in New Jersey, and that's it. Breckinridge carried the South, all of those yellow states there. And you can see that John Bell, the Constitutional Union Party, actually did surprisingly well, but only in those border states. So the ones that are near the border between the North and the South, between the Mason-Dixon line and the Missouri Compromise line, those states that are close to the North and the South at the same time. And so we can see, just looking at this map, that there is a clear geographic divide politically over who will be elected in each state. The reason this is so significant is because it led immediately to the secession of 7 southern states. So 7 states in the South, led by South Carolina, seceded from the Union, meaning they quit the country, they left the United States before Lincoln was even inaugurated as president in March of 1861. And ultimately, the nation has been divided in two. And we are going to see the formation of the Confederate States of America and the coming of the American Civil War. This political cartoon, which you will analyze, shows this fighting between the 4 candidates trying to grab territory in the United States. And we'll leave with Washington's farewell address in 1796. So when George Washington, America's first president, was leaving office in 1796, he mentioned some issues related to sectionalism. He was concerned that sectionalism would become a problem in the United States, that it should be avoided, and that Northerners and Southerners should think of themselves primarily as Americans, not as people from a particular region. And he was also concerned that political parties would be problematic because they would make it difficult for the president to promote the issues and the interests of the entire nation rather than the interests of his or her own political party. So George Washington's words seem to somewhat predict issues that would show up in the election of 1860. I hope this helps you understand one of the most important elections in American history. Thanks for watching.